Dana White has been announcing some fights for UFC 300, and it seems like UFC 300 is going to be a huge disappointment. It seems like UFC 299 might actually be bigger and better than UFC 300. We were all told UFC 300 is going to have stars, competitiveness. From the first fight to the main event, every fight's going to be a holy shit fight. And it just doesn't seem like that so far. It kind of seems like some of these fights are just thrown on there and they kind of did this short notice or didn't really think about some of these fights. And some of these fights on UFC 300 are alright, but I don't think it's worth UFC 300 worthy. The only fight I like is Charles Oliveira and Arman Tsarukyan. But other than that, I really don't like these fights. I think UFC 299 might be a better, bigger card, and it might be one of the best cards I've ever seen. We're going to go over UFC 300 and compare it to UFC 299, and I'm going to give you my thoughts on this whole thing. Be sure to like, comment, and subscribe. Now let's get into it. Before we get into it, I would like to apologize. My voice is gone. I've been sick for the past couple of days, and I've really been trying to hold off as long as I can, but I just have to make a video about UFC 300. Dana White keeps on announcing more and more fights, and it's just been pissing me off and off more and more, and it seems like this is just a huge disappointment for everyone. It feels like these cards, they're supposed to mean something. They're supposed to hold value. When you look at UFC 100, UFC 200, and UFC 300, it's supposed to have meaning. You're supposed to look at every single fight and think, this is a banger. This is a banger. Oh my God, this was on there? And it seems like for UFC 300, all of these fights are just kind of late notice. And like some of the fights are good, but they're not worth UFC 300. Dana White just announced the first title fight for UFC 300. Zhang Weili taking on Yan Xiaonan. And you know what? I like this fight, but not for UFC 300. UFC 300 worthy for Zhang Weili is like Alexa Grasso, and that's being like the Coco main event, right? The third fight on the card. I made a video on what I want a UFC 300 to be. It was a pretty accurate card, and I had Zhang Weili taking Alexa Grasso. Zhang Weili, one of the best strawweight fighters, going up a weight class, taking on a flyweight champion, Alexa Grasso. That is worth UFC 300. But having Zhang Weili as the first title fight against Yan Xiaonan, it kind of seems like now this better be the opening fight in the main card, and there is 5 titles, even though that's not going to happen. Because it's like, where do you put that fight? That's co-main event, Zhang Weili, Yan Xiaonan. Is that co-main event? And then like, when you look at UFC 300, really the only options they have left for main event, realistically, is like Alex Pereira and Jamal Hill, which probably happen. You have Leon Edwards, Bilal Muhammad, which could happen. You have Islam and Justin Gaethje, but that probably won't happen because Islam Makhachev just came out in a tweet saying he wanted to fight in June against Justin. So that's about it. And unless you do some crazy heavyweight interim fight, you can't really do any other matchup. Like, there's really nothing available. So it's like, it just seems like UFC 300 is just slapped down with a bunch of like weird contender fights, cool matchups, but like nothing worth UFC 300 worthy. There's only two fights so far that are UFC 300 main card worthy, and that is Charles Oliveira and Arman Tsarukyan. I love that fight. And maybe Zhang Weili and Yan Xiaonan. That's about it. Yuri Prochazka and Alexander Rakic. That's a good fight. But that's worth UFC 300 main card worthy? No. If you look at UFC 299, main event, Sean O'Malley, Marlon Vera. Okay, that might not be the best bantamweight fight matchup to make right now, but it's still pretty good. Main event, co-main event, Dustin Poirier and Benoit Saint-Denis. A fire fight. You know why this is a great fight? Because Dustin Poirier has everything to lose and nothing to gain against someone who's riding a 5-fight win streak with crazy knockout power and is ranked 12th in the lightweight division. That's amazing. Co-main event, 5-round war, right? And you know it's going to be a war. Benoit Saint-Denis loves to throw. Dustin Poirier is a master in boxing. He's going to want to throw. He loves the clinch game, right? The inside style boxing, he loves it. Gilbert Burns and Jack Della Maddalena, love that fight. Same situation against Dustin. Gilbert Burns ranked 4th. Jack Della Maddalena ranked 11th. Gilbert Burns has everything to lose and nothing to gain. Then the 4th fight, Kevin Holland taking on the new UFC debut fighter, Michael Venom Page coming over from Bellator. Love that. It's going to be a crazy striking affair. Amazing fight. And then you have Curtis Blade and Jalton Almeida, arguably the #1 heavyweight contender. Curtis Blade's great wrestler, looking to extend his win streak and get a title shot. And Jalton Almeida, who's been on a roll, just dominating everybody, right? Mateusz Gamrot taking on RDA. Great fun fight. Mateusz Gamrot's coming off that weird win that really doesn't count against Fiziev. A fun, very interesting matchup. Peter Yan, Song Yadong. Amazing matchup. Number 5, number 7 in the bantamweight division. Pedro Munoz taking on Kyler Phillips. Amazing matchup. Like, UFC 299 is stacked. And all of these fights won't be on the main card, right? You have Peter Young, Song Yadong is probably going to be on the prelims. Like, that's insane to say. And, you know, there is still a lot of time for UFC 300. They have plenty of time to add more fights and make it fun. But it just seems like the looks of it. It seems like UFC 300 is made up of a lot of last-minute fights that don't really make sense or have meaning, or fights that, like, don't make sense if a fighter wins, right? Calvin Kattar, Aljamain Sterling. Fun fight. Aljamain's going to test his featherweight skills and go up. But if Aljamain beats Calvin Kattar, he's not getting a title shot. And if Calvin Kattar beats Aljamain, he's not getting a title shot. And if Aljamain Sterling beats Calvin Kattar from holding his back the entire time, what are we learning from? Who's he going to fight next, you know? And then Yuri Prohaska and Alexander Rakic. Yuri just lost to Alex Pereira by knockout. If he goes in there and beats Alexander Rakic, he's not getting a title shot. It's a fun fight, but it's not a title shot. It will probably be competitive. You know, Alexander Rakic is a great wrestler. He's a hard hitter. He's a good fighter. But it just doesn't seem like, this is UFC 300 worthy so far. Like, we have yet to get a fight that is dedicated to the main card where we're like, holy shit, this is worth. My problem really comes down to UFC 300 has yet to have a fight announced where even casuals are thinking, holy shit, this is an amazing fight. We must watch this. There is no, like, holy shit fight yet. No casual can look at the card yet and think, oh my god, this is amazing. We got to tell everybody. And that's what my problem with UFC 300. It just seems like UFC 300 isn't going to hold up to what it's going to be. UFC 299 is going to be far better. And I'm pretty disappointed. By the looks of it, I was wrong. I think UFC 300 might actually be a huge disappointment. And UFC 299 might be the card of the year.